Our little blue dot, as Carl Sagan so affectionately called Earth, is roughly 70% water, and that water is precious. However, we have not been taking care of it. According to the Natural Resource Defense Council, some 80% of the world's wastewater is dumped, largely untreated, back into the environment, polluting rivers, lakes, and oceans. The NRDC also says that unsafe water kills more people each year than war and all other forms of violence combined. In addition, nitrogen runoff from fertilizers seep into our bodies of water and cause massive algae blooms that essentially suffocate the other life forms there, and these blooms are happening at an ever-increasing rate. The burning of fossil fuels is also a big factor of water pollution. When burned, sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides are released into the atmosphere and are then absorbed by water vapor, which forms acid. When this cycles through and becomes rain, the result is acid rain, which returns to our waterways, making animal reproduction extremely difficult. Mercury is another pollutant, and while it occurs naturally when waste is burned, and especially when coal is burned, mercury dissolves in water and is picked up by fish and shellfish. With these animals being at the base of some food chains, poisonous mercury eventually makes its way up to us at the top.
Many marine animals are negatively affected by water pollution of all different types. One of the most common issues is aquatic animals and mammals accidentally ingesting plastic material. They can also become trapped in certain types of litter like plastic six-pack rings, discarded fishing lines and nets, and more. In some bodies of water, the chemical pollution has been known to change the sex of multiple types of fish. A very large problem for many bodies of water is agricultural runoff, which can cause many dead zones. It is easy to forget that humans are not the only ones affected by water pollution. Animals are incredibly involved in the effects of it. In fact, the entire food chain feels the impacts due to the interconnectedness of nature. This is known as biomagnification, the process by which a compound, such as a pollutant or pesticide, increases its concentration in tissues of organisms as it travels up the food chain.
Natural water is regarded as life sustenance to plants, animals, and all other organisms in existence. Narrowing in on only plants, it is important to understand what the various functions of water are and how they operate. These functions are as follows: maintaining cell rigidity for structure and growth, transporting nutrients and organic compounds throughout the plant, comprising much of the living protoplasm in the cells, serving as a raw material for various chemical processes, including photosynthesis, and through transpiration, buffering the plant against wide temperature fluctuations. Now that we know all the different ways in which water is involved in the plant life cycle, imagine what would happen if our natural water disappeared. Not only would our aquatic life die, but so would our plant life, and in fact, all life would eventually die out.
Improvements in public health over the past century have been underpinned by positive advances in the management of vital resources, such as water and food. Water quality and food safety are inextricably linked. However, freshwater resources are becoming increasingly scarce. Water usage in North America increased by about 8 times from the 1900s to 1995, while global water use in 2000 was similarly estimated to be nearly 3 times than that in 1950. The availability of adequate freshwater resources in both quantity and quality is vital to food safety and production. It plays a role in primary production and in processing. Therefore, the food industry, in common with other industries, must address the future trends relating to this resource and move towards increasing efficiency in water use. Water, like food, is a potential vehicle for the direct transmissions of agents of disease and continues to cause significant outbreaks of disease in developed and developing countries. Water is, therefore, also capable of introducing contamination into food if appropriate care is not taken. In 1970, a cholera epidemic in Jerusalem was traced back to consumption of salad vegetables irrigated with raw wastewater, and in 2006, a chocolate company located in the United Kingdom was affected by contamination of chocolate by salmonella, reputedly from a leaking wastewater pipe in the production area. Although water is just one route by which foods can be contaminated with disease-causing agents or toxic chemicals, it is potentially very important. Raw water can be contaminated with pathogens, usually a consequence of human or animal fecal material or runoff contaminated with fecal material.
Although water pollution is well known to affect the lives of aquatic animals, it can also affect the lives of animals from the land and the air as well. More than 1 million seabirds and mammals are killed each year by ingestion of plastic. Around 100 million tons of plastic is produced every year, of which 10% ends up in the sea. Ocean litter comes from many sources, including trash that washes off city streets, waste blown in from landfills, and containers that fall off ships during heavy storms. Once in the water, the debris accumulates in large patches, travels with currents, and washes up on shore. This litter is frequently consumed, often with fatal effects, by marine mammals, fish, and birds who mistake it for food. One example of this is the albatross, a seabird that spends most of its life out in the oceans. They are only known to come to land during their mating season, where they hatch and raise their young. Because of this, it is rare to see an albatross, and even though we have little contact with them, our pollution affects them greatly. They have been known to be one of the animals that consistently mistake plastic for food. The albatross often feed this plastic to their young, killing most chicks instantly. Online, there are many pictures and articles depicting albatross stomachs full of plastic, which eventually kills them. Some sources say that after they die and the body decomposes, the pile of plastic from their stomach that killed them is the only thing that remains.
The energy crisis is the concern that the world's demands on the limited natural resources that are used to power industrial society are diminishing as the demand rises. These natural resources are in limited supply. While they do occur naturally, it can take hundreds of thousands of years to replenish the stores. Governments and concerned individuals are working to make the use of renewable resources a priority and to lessen the irresponsible use of natural supplies through increased conservation. You sometimes hear of given areas of the world struggling due to a lack of a certain natural resource. If society can somehow figure out how to balance these issues by using more acquired areas, the environmental crisis will fall. Also, energy supply can come naturally. Governments have been implementing natural processes, including wind power, water power, and solar power.
When it comes to our dependence on water, it cannot be understated. A teacher of mine in high school who is still a close friend said that the wars currently fought over oil will pale in comparison to the wars that will be fought over water come a water crisis. And he is right. We can live without oil. Life without water? No chance. And that is the situation currently facing Cape Town, South Africa. I was fortunate enough to visit Cape Town for 2 weeks with St. John's in May 2017, and every place we went to had signs everywhere asking people to be extremely conservative with their water. According to an article on the website CityLab, a division of The Atlantic, officials set a target of 50 liters or 13 gallons per person per day for all domestic uses: cooking, bathing, toilet flushing, and washing clothes. Watering lawns and scrubbing cars with city water had already been banned for months. For now, the efforts have worked, and the day when all the water is forecasted to run out, appropriately named Day Zero, has been pushed back until early 2019. However, this is still only temporary. People have had to massively overhaul the way they live in the city and surrounding townships. And Cape Town isn't the only major city facing these challenges. According to BBC News, other cities that face similar water crises include Sao Paulo, Bangalore, Beijing, Cairo, Moscow, Mexico City, and London.
Pollution from land-based sources is a primary cause of coral reef degradation throughout the world. Runoff often carries large quantities of sediment from land clearing, high levels of nutrients from agricultural areas and sewage outflows, and pollutants such as petroleum products and pesticides. Excess nutrients result in poor water quality, leading to decreased oxygen and increased nutrients in the water. This can lead to enhanced algal growth on reefs, crowding out corals and significantly degrading the ecosystem. Finally, pesticides interfere with coral reproduction and growth. Sewage discharge and runoff may also introduce pathogens into the coral reef ecosystem. The effects of pollution on insects occur at a variety of spatial and temporal scales. For example, effects can occur at the molecular level in fractions of seconds, at the ecosystem level over several decades, and at various scales in between these extremes. The most easily detected responses are at the level of the individual, in which evaluation is often based on whether an insect lives or dies when exposed to a contaminant. However, population and community levels are generally used when effects are examined in nature. Within a population, we can see shifts occurring in the frequency of organisms of different sizes. When found in high numbers, macroinvertebrates, like adult rifle beetles and gilled snails, can serve as bioindicators of good water quality. These creatures are usually highly sensitive to pollution. These organisms tend to require highly dissolved oxygen levels. If these organisms were once abundant, but subsequent sampling shows a decline in numbers, it may indicate that a pollution incident
Dead sperm
occurred.
whale that washed ashore in eastern Indonesia had consumed a horrifying collection of plastic trash, including 115 drinking cups, 25 plastic bags, plastic bottles, 2 flip-flops, and a bag containing more than 1,000 pieces of string. Sperm whales normally feed mostly on giant squid, supplemented with octopus, fish, shrimp, crab, and small sharks. They are found throughout all the world's oceans and are listed as endangered under the Endangered Species Act and considered depleted under the Marine Mammal Protection Act. The main reason for something like this occurring within aquatic life would have to be the fact that these life forms have never been in contact with plastic materials. This means that these whales and other aquatic life don't understand how harmful the action of ingesting these materials can be to their bodies in the long run, ultimately leading to their demise. Unfortunately, they don't have a choice due to the fact that some percent of oceans now contain plastic in a growing level. These friendly creatures don't deserve any of this nonsense. Our pollution of plastics and other dangerous materials, not only on land but also sea, directly accounts for the extraction of the basic rights these coexisting creatures share within life.
We Homo sapiens have a responsibility like that of no other species on this planet. With how widespread the human race has become, our actions and decisions are no longer constrained to small local areas. Instead, our impact crosses borders and boundaries, affecting all different types of ecosystems. The problems we now face are global in scale and pose dire consequences to not only our species, but to numerous other species we share our home with. We have dumped our waste into oceans and rivers, affecting our marine species, resulting in widespread algal blooms and fish kills. We have polluted our air with the byproducts of industry, causing acid rain which then suffocates the fish and causes die-offs. And we have poured millions of gallons of fertilizer into our farms and soils, the majority of which run off into our water systems and cause massive chemical imbalances. All of these things are our responsibility, plain and simple. We cannot bury our heads in the sand any longer. We must act like the stewards of nature that we are. We have come to a crux in human history, and we must think in terms of the whole, no longer as individuals. Like the Dhammapada says, as a bee gathering nectar does not harm or disturb the color or fragrance of the flower, so do the wise move through the world.
We used to look up in the sky and wonder at our place in the stars. Now we just look down and worry about our place in the dirt.
Heading to the movies? Ready to marathon watch a new show? Why not take a book along too? Pop culture has been asking important questions about how humans live in, work in, and understand human and more than human worlds. What is a good place? What do environmental and labor injustice look like? What are the ethics of space colonization? Work by environmental humanities scholars can offer historical and political context, real-world parallels, and new frameworks for watching. The movie Interstellar is one of the greatest examples of pop culture mixing in subtle messages based upon the environment. The movie is based on Earth's future. A global crop blight and second dust bowl are slowly rendering the planet uninhabitable. Professor Brand, a brilliant NASA physicist, is working on plans to save mankind by transporting Earth's population to a new home via a wormhole. But first, Brand must send former NASA pilot Cooper and a team of researchers through the wormhole and across the galaxy to find out which of 3 planets could be mankind's new home.
For any change to be made, mankind must come together and work towards the goal of preserving the earth. Sacred teaching and moral principles are crucial in enlightening humans to realize and analyze the error in our ways. This could catalyze a movement for restoring life to earth. By understanding the principles and rights entitled to all living beings, plants, and organisms, humanistic guidance would take over. Humans would use science and technology to undo the catastrophic harm done to Earth by mankind. Before we can achieve this, we must all first understand the importance of sacred teaching and general moral principles to all life on Earth. The destruction of Earth has come so far that it may be too late for merely faith alone. We must refrain from the continuing trend of hoping that we will right our wrongs to the environment without taking the proper action to incite change. It is going to require a great deal of effort, perhaps much more so than faith, to reverse the detriment humans have done to the Earth. This is especially true today, with a recent report from the UN claiming that there are only 12 years remaining before we reach irreversible environmental destruction. To make a change, humans must dedicate maximum efforts towards Earth's environmental preservation. Before the feelings towards environmental preservation can be joined with realistic action, humans must first reach a unified attitude towards preserving the Earth. First and foremost, the attitude or belief that Earth has to be preserved must be unanimously accepted. Humans must reach the realization that there has been an unfathomable amount of life on Earth up to this point. Life does not end at the human species, nor does it end with them either. This simply means that life is abundant, and humans merely make up a fraction of all living beings, creatures, and organisms on this planet. Furthermore, trillions of humans have come before us, and many more humans will continue to come to life in the future. However, if we hope to see many more humans and the longevity of the human species, we must first protect and preserve our only home. Coming to this unified understanding would allow for the realistic practices and actions